the one that I think most illustrates the subtle ways in which the media infects the way we think, is this one. Because so many people who would ordinarily know much better and have quite a clear line on things are absolutely persuaded that Harry and Meghan are the wrong uns, and that the royal family as it is, or Kate and William, or even Andrew Windsor, that they're the good guys. It's extraordinary, and it hasn't happened by accident. It is the best example, with the possible exception of Brexit, it is the best example of media gaslighting that I have witnessed in my life. And speaking of Brexit, find me someone that hates Harry and Meghan, but can't really tell you why, except something, loyalty something, and I'll find you someone that voted for Brexit. In almost every case, but perhaps not every. 20-12 is the time. So you explain to me how the man mired in really mired for years now in lurid sex abuse allegations, vehemently denied, but whenever you are reminded of the vehement denial, you must also be reminded of the millions of pounds paid to one of his accusers in order to make one legal case go away. Gets an absolute gets a comparatively easy ride from the UK media, even in the last year, even post-disgrace, even post-payment, when he's sort of slowly crept back into the royal entourage at Sandringham on Christmas Day, or he's slowly crept back into the sort of public space. Was he allowed to wear a uniform? And Harry wasn't at one event. I could have misremembered that, or maybe they changed their mind at the last minute. But the idea that he gets an easier ride than his nephew, who has done nothing wrong, is extraordinary. And I'd like you to explain it to a mythical listener who's been asleep for 10 years. Angela is in Bracknell. Angela, what made you pick up the phone?
Because I've always liked Prince Harry, yes. And I do feel that he has been totally wronged by the British media. When he met Meghan, they made an extraordinary modern royal couple. She was portrayed as the golden girl at many events, and then bizarrely she was thrown to the wolves, and the public are force-fed on a daily basis nasty stories about mainly her, and unfortunately they meet the same opinion. And then you end up thinking that the egg is the chicken, don't you? You end up thinking that the negativity and the vitriol is justified by their behaviour. Exactly. I mean, for example, she chose to have her royal children in a different hospital, and she was absolutely crucified by that. It's her entitlement to choose where she wants to have her children. Another thing that really outraged me is the constant Piers Morgan criticism of her, and the Jeremy Clarkson, how his career survived after that article he wrote about her. That was nothing short of an absolute disgrace.
It was pretty grim, actually. I wrote about that.
Absolutely disgusting.
I wrote about that in my book, and I did that thing. It happened a few times writing the book, and where I just had to double check I remembered it correctly, because it was so gross what he wrote. I mean, it was absolutely breathtakingly disgusting. But of course, if you're on the right side, both the people you mentioned very much Rupert Murdoch creations, and therefore held to very, very different standards from the rest of the media firmament, I think. So the bit that possibly needs a little bit more exploration is the bit where the bond broke, where the media sort of changed direction or changed forces, and you think that's because they wanted to do things their own way. It would be that simple.
Well, it was really bizarre, because one minute she was signing bananas at a charity. She wrote a little message, I remember, on a banana at I think it may have been a Woman's Aid. She wrote little words of encouragement on bananas, and she was so praised at something so simple. But then all of a sudden it turned around, and anything and everything that poor woman did, she was annihilated.
Yes.
And it's almost like public figure number one, hated public figure number one, and they can't do anything. And yet you've got Andrew, who quite frankly should hang his head in shame and be sent to the tower.
These are figures of speech, of course. No, well, I mean, you do understand, but you don't understand. You're the same as me. I think we can probably assemble the jigsaw, but when we've assembled the jigsaw, we can't quite believe what we're looking at. We sort of go, well, how can that be? Just to make one example, BuzzFeed put together a wonderful selection of comparisons that I think if anybody honest were to read it properly, they'd have to abandon any opinion, even close to the one that Jason was sharing earlier. Here's the same newspaper, right? Both of these stories come from the Mail, and one is about Kate Middleton and one is about Meghan Markle, to use their maiden names. Not long to go, pregnant Kate tenderly cradles her baby bump while wrapping up her royal duties ahead of maternity leave, and William confirms she's due any minute now. So that's the Mail talking about Kate Middleton's baby bump during her pregnancy. Why can't Meghan Markle keep her hands off her bump? Experts tackle the question that has got the nation talking. Is it pride, vanity, acting, or a new age bonding technique? So there are two women doing exactly the same thing. They are cradling their baby bump. Okay? Two pregnant women in the royal family two pregnant women, both married to princes, doing exactly the same thing. In exactly the same newspaper. One of them is tenderly cradling her baby bump, and one of them is posing the question that has got the nation talking. Is it pride, vanity, acting, or a new age bonding technique? And that's why the arguments, well, they shouldn't give so many interviews, or we shouldn't write books, or they shouldn't sign deals with Netflix, is so, forgive me, pathetic. They were doing that in 2019 in Meghan's case and 9 months previously in Kate's. The same story. Two women from the same family doing the same thing, being reported in the same newspaper. And I wish I had some sort of ask the audience type device sometimes, like they have on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because, you know, you can't hear me say that and cling to the view that you had before. If you were thinking, oh, no, she's a wrong and no, it's rubbish, it's not media manipulation, it's all their own fault. No one's gaslit me. I'll arrive at my own conclusions. Thank you very much. You can't do that. You can't hear me. And that's only one example. I've got 5 more, 10 more, 20 more. But that is so direct, that comparison, that it beggars belief. Two women, both married to princes, in the same family, doing the same thing, reported in the same newspaper. One of them, pregnant Kate tenderly cradles her baby bump while wrapping up her royal duties ahead of maternity leave. The other one, why can't Meghan Markle keep her hands off her bump? Experts tackle the question that has got the nation talking. Is it pride, vanity, acting, or a new age bonding technique? Love to the family. Here's another one. You ready? Kate's morning sickness cure. This is nice. Two women, same family, both married to princes, both got morning sickness. No, I beg your pardon. Both. Well, I'll read you the story. Both in the Express, this one, which I think technically still qualifies as a newspaper. Kate's morning sickness cure, ? Prince William gifted with an avocado for pregnant Duchess. Isn't that lovely? So the story had been reported that Kate was suffering from morning sickness, and therefore a friendly member of the public who believed, I think it's an old wives' tale, that an avocado, well, I am probably the only person in England who still calls an avocado pear, an avocado would be a good cure for morning. Isn't that sweet? Another headline, same newspaper. Meghan Markle's beloved avocado linked to human rights abuse and drought. Millennial shame. That's a story about avocados. One avocado has been linked to Kate Middleton. Kate's morning sickness cure. Prince William gifted with an avocado for pregnant Duchess. Another avocado is linked to Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle's beloved avocado linked to human rights abuse and drought. Millennial shame. And now tell me that they brought it on themselves by doing all those interviews. Imis Yalua is in Fulham. Hello.
Hi, James. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. Good to speak to you.
Likewise. What's going on?
Actually, just before I start, I wanted to say your tribute to Kate Garraway's husband was very lovely. You did.
I wish it
very
wasn't
right.
necessary, but it's very kind of you to say so. Thank you.
I know. You did very right by your friend, and I know it's a really tough time to have to do stuff like this in this time, so well done to you.
Thank you.
That was my first thing. My second thing is, and you and I have had plenty of conversations on this topic, but I mean, the most obvious one is a nice little bit of racism and sexism. It's always nice to be reminded of the society in which we live. And I think if there's one thing that you can say that really kind of highlights that is the way that Andrew Windsor, I also love that he's no longer Prince Andrew on this show. I think that's
Not
great.
on this show. Although I'll forget, you know how it works. I come up with these wizard wheezes. I've usually forgotten about them by 12:30. But I'll try. I'll say it. So it's disgraced former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Andrew Windsor. So there we go. 2024 has started well. Carry on.
How Andrew Windsor is portrayed and how Harry and Meghan have been portrayed. And I'm not always the biggest Harry and Meghan fan.
Sure.
I do think sometimes they've gone too far, but I do think that in this case, this man used £12 million of his mother's money. Let's also get that straight. He didn't have any. He had to go and ask his mother for it to pay a woman who said that he raped her. And I think that what it shows us is that what we're willing to allow people to let us forget. Because I was saying to your researcher, the reason that we remember Harry so much is because he's kind of pushed in our face.
Yes.
It's constant. It's like they did this and they did this and they did this and the nation's talking about it. People are like, oh, okay, well, the nation's talking about it, therefore it must be happening. But what you do forget is that somebody has actually written that headline.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean that the nation was talking about it before, but they're talking about it now.
And the other point, of course, which I've forgotten to mention is, I guess I've got a couple more of these examples that are truly breathtaking, the baby bump and the avocado so far. But the tradition would be for a quid pro quo. So I think Harry's big grievance, and he talks about this in the book, in Spare, his big grievance is that they felt that they were just being hung out to dry and that these stories were not being pushed back against. There was nothing in the palace machinery that was protecting them in the way that it would have protected his brother and his wife.
No, I definitely agree. Like, there was no protection for them. But I also think, like, you have to remember what Meghan represents. Like, she's a mixed race woman, and the reality is that the British media doesn't see her as that. They kind of follow the one drop rule. Like, she's black. Like, and it's so alien to what they think royalty should be. It doesn't make sense. You can't look at that and think, oh, following the tradition of hundreds and hundreds of years, this is what a royal should be. No, she's bucked the trend. She's different.
So it was always doomed then, in a way.
It was always doomed. It was always doomed. It was always doomed. Like, I remember when I heard it happened, I thought, why would you marry into this family? Why? Like, there's nothing about this family that makes you think that you, as the kind of woman you are, will be safe. They won't. No, they won't keep you safe. It's just not going to happen, and it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate, and we're seeing it now that the rehabilitation of a potentially a sexual predator. He was at Sandringham walking up and down like nothing happened.
Yes, that's just true. And you know, as you say, potentially or accusations and allegations with that constant side order of millions of pounds being paid out to one of his accusers. He was clearly embarked upon a sort of slow creep back into the setup, wasn't he? And these latest revelations and the response from the palace, who will not have been taken by surprise by the front pages today, that this is a sort of a parting of the ways, time to give Andrew the chop, no way back. That's the Sun and the Mail, the two sort of biggest players in this market, clearly are singing from the same hymn sheet, and it's over for him. But the planet on which Andrew's plight situation is in any way comparable to Harry's doesn't exist except on Fleet Street. You know, the idea that Harry will have garnered more negative headlines over the last 5 years than his uncle Andrew. It's breathtaking, and I'm sure you're right, Miss Yulua, the notion of her being such a violent rejection of royal history. You know, you cannot rise to the top of our society in this country if you are like her. You just can't. And whether that is racism or not is very much up to you. For me, it is. You know, it's because you justify the existence of the royal family by buying into some sort of notion of human hierarchy. And one of the most insidious examples of any notion of human hierarchy is race-based. So if you're buying into the notion of human hierarchy, and then someone comes along who, according to your other human hierarchy, should be inferior to you, how can she end up being a princess? There it is. And unfortunately, having worked with and on some of these newspapers, with some of the people who've risen subsequently to positions of power, they do think like that. They would, whether consciously or not, they would have a huge problem with the idea of a woman of colour being above them in the food chain. I will bend the knee to Charles and Camilla. I will bend the knee to William and Kate. I'm not bending any knee, metaphorical or otherwise, to some mixed-race woman from America. God forbid. Snobbery and race, class and race.
Media manipulation and royal double standards. A James O'Brien. Exposé. Listen, right? If you've been paying attention to what's happened over the last few years, and I mean really paying attention, not just scrolling past headlines on your phone, Then you'll understand exactly what I'm about to tell you, because it's the most brazen example of media gaslighting I've witnessed in my entire life, bar none, possibly excepting Brexit. Here's the thing that absolutely winds me up. You've got a man, Andrew Windsor, absolutely mired in lurid sex abuse allegations for years now. Allegations he vehemently denies. Fine. But let's not forget the millions of pounds he paid out to settle one of those cases, shall we? And yet this man gets a comparatively easy ride from the UK media. He's slowly creeping back into public life. He's at Sandringham, he's in uniforms, and the palace machinery is protecting him. Meanwhile, his nephew, who has done nothing wrong, gets absolutely eviscerated day after day after day. And if you think that's not media manipulation, if you honestly believe that the disparity in coverage between these two men has anything to do with their actual behaviour, rather than calculated editorial decisions made in the offices of papers owned by Rupert Murdoch, then I'm afraid you've been successfully gaslit, because the Mail, that's the same newspaper, right, ran 2 stories about 2 pregnant women in the royal family doing the exact same thing. One headline read, "Pregnant Kate tenderly cradles her baby bump while wrapping up her royal duties," and the other asked, "Why can't Meghan Markle keep her hands off her bump?" Experts tackle the question that has got the nation talking. Is it pride, vanity, acting, or a new age bonding technique? 2 women, same family, same newspaper, same action. Completely different narratives. And that, my friends, is how you manufacture consent and destroy a person's reputation without ever having to tell a single lie. The gaslighting machine. How media manufactured a narrative. Listen, what we're witnessing here is nothing short of orchestrated character assassination, and I need you to understand just how systematic, how deliberate, and how utterly transparent this entire operation actually is. The media hasn't simply reported negatively on Harry and Meghan. They've constructed an entire narrative architecture designed to poison public opinion, and the most infuriating part is that so many intelligent people who would ordinarily see through this have been absolutely convinced by it. This is the best example of media gaslighting I've witnessed in my lifetime, and I want you to really sit with that for a moment because it's extraordinary. What's happened here is a coordinated campaign where the same newspapers, the exact same publications, will report on 2 women doing the identical thing, in the same family, married to princes, and somehow manage to present one as tenderly cradling, while describing the other as vain and performative. That's not journalism, that's psychological manipulation dressed up in newsprint. The public has been conditioned, systematically and relentlessly, to accept negative narratives about this couple without ever questioning the manufactured nature of the campaign itself. People consume these stories day after day, headline after headline, and they begin to believe that the sheer volume of negativity must somehow be justified by actual behaviour. But it isn't. It's been created, amplified, and weaponized by an industry that knows exactly what it's doing. And that, my friends, is the definition of gaslighting on an industrial scale. The Andrew Windsor paradox. How a disgraced royal escapes accountability while Harry bears the brunt. Here's the thing that absolutely beggars belief, and I cannot stress this enough. A man mired, genuinely mired for years now, in serious sex abuse allegations, vehemently denied, of course, but conveniently accompanied by millions of pounds paid to one of his accusers to make a legal case simply vanish, gets a comparatively easy ride from the UK tabloids. And I mean genuinely easy. Even post-disgrace, Even after payment, he slowly, methodically crept back into the royal entourage at Sandringham, back into public spaces, back into uniforms, the rehabilitation of a potentially sexual predator happening right before our eyes, while the palace machinery that could have protected him simply allows it to happen. Meanwhile, his nephew, who has done absolutely nothing wrong, faces relentless, unending criticism for far less serious transgressions, book deals, interviews, Netflix agreements, treated as though he's committed some cardinal sin against the institution. It's not just hypocritical, it's breathtaking. It's the most extraordinary illustration of how the media, working in concert with institutional power, decides whose sins are forgivable and whose must be endlessly exhumed. The notion that Andrew Windsor's situation is in any way comparable to Harry's simply doesn't exist, except on Fleet Street, where somehow, miraculously, a man credibly accused of serious crimes receives gentler treatment than a man whose crime was daring to tell his story and expect protection from the very institution he married into. The double standard. When the same action gets opposite treatment. Listen, this is where the whole thing unravels if you're paying attention. And honestly, most people aren't, which is precisely the problem. The Mail, right? The same newspaper, same outlet, same journalistic machinery, reporting on two women in the exact same family doing the exact same thing. Kate's cradling her baby bump during pregnancy, and it's described as her tenderly caring for her unborn child. A beautiful moment of maternal devotion wrapped up in soft, protective language. Meghan does the identical gesture, hand on bump, same pose, same pregnancy, and suddenly it becomes a national inquiry. Why can't Meghan Markle keep her hands off her bump? Experts tackle the question that has got the nation talking. Is it pride, vanity, acting, or a new age bonding technique? Two women, two princes, one family, one newspaper, and yet the narrative couldn't be more different. It's not even subtle. It's brazen. And then we get the avocado stories because apparently newspapers have nothing better to do than report on what royals eat. Kate gets gifted an avocado for her morning sickness, and it's Kate's morning sickness cure. Sweet, helpful, a touching gesture from a member of the public. Meghan's avocado? Meghan Markle's beloved avocado linked to human rights abuse and drought. Millennial shame. The same fruit, different women. Completely inverted moral judgments. This is the machinery at work. This is how it happens. The Murdoch media machine and its relentless campaign against the Sussexes. Here's the thing that absolutely boils my blood about all of this, and you lot know exactly what I'm talking about. Piers Morgan and Jeremy Clarkson, both Murdoch creations through and through, have become the public faces of a coordinated apparatus that operates under entirely different rules than the rest of the media landscape. These aren't just talking heads spouting opinions. They're the tip of a very deliberate spear designed to shape what you think, what you believe, what you feel about Harry and Meghan. And the truly sinister part, it's worked brilliantly. Morgan's relentless criticism, Clarkson's absolutely disgusting article, I mean genuinely breathtakingly vile. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of an orchestrated campaign, a daily bombardment of negativity so sustained, so coordinated, that people who genuinely should know better have been absolutely persuaded that the couple are the villains in this story. The media didn't just report on negativity. They amplified it, weaponized it, and when you control the narrative with this kind of firepower, with outlets operating under different standards, held to very different standards from the rest of the media firmament, you can make anything stick. You can take two women doing exactly the same thing and call one of them tender, while questioning the other one's motives, pride, and vanity. That's not journalism, that's gaslighting on an industrial scale, and frankly, it's absolutely indefensible. Media manipulation and royal double standards. How racism and classism destroyed Meghan's image. Here's what you need to understand about why the British media turned on Meghan Markle so viciously, and it all comes down to something rather uncomfortable that nobody wants to say out loud. She represents a fundamental threat to centuries of royal tradition and the rigid class structure that underpins British society itself. You see, Meghan's mixed-race identity directly conflicts with these outdated, deeply entrenched notions of who should be royalty. And the British media, dominated by Murdoch creations and the establishment elite, simply cannot stomach the idea of a woman of colour ascending above them in the social hierarchy. This isn't about her doing interviews or signing Netflix deals or anything else they claim to object to. It's about the fact that you cannot rise to the top of British society if you look like her, if you're from her background, if you're a woman of colour who dares to sit above Fleet Street's gatekeepers and their readers. The newspapers couldn't accept it then, and they still can't accept it now. Whether you call it racism or snobbery or class anxiety, the result is the same. A coordinated, relentless campaign of character assassination against a woman whose only real crime was marrying into the wrong family, while having the audacity to be both powerful and brown. The palace protection racket. Here's the thing that absolutely defies belief when you actually sit down and examine it properly. The royal machinery doesn't protect everyone equally. It actively shields certain family members while systematically abandoning others to the wolves. Harry and Meghan received zero institutional defence against what was clearly a coordinated media assault, a relentless battering that came day after day after day. Yet William and Kate benefit from palace PR protection, so robust, so methodical, that it becomes almost invisible in its effectiveness. You can see it in the comparisons, can't you? The same newspaper, the same family, two women doing the exact same thing, cradling a baby bump during pregnancy, and one tenderly cradles her baby bump while wrapping up her royal duties, while the other gets, why can't Meghan Markle keep her hands off her bump? Experts tackle the question that has got the nation talking. The palace machinery didn't push back on that. There was nothing in the system protecting them the way it would have protected his brother and his wife. And that's not coincidence, that's not accident, that's a choice. A deliberate, institutional choice to let one couple get torn apart by the machinery while another gets cushioned by it. The Sussex brand of abandonment stands in stark contrast to the Cambridge coddling, and anyone honest enough to really look at the evidence would have to admit that the difference isn't about what they've done, it's about who they are and who they represent. Media manipulation and the architecture of public opinion. Breaking the cycle of manipulation requires us to become detectives of our own minds, to interrogate where our certainties actually originate. Recognizing specific examples of media bias is essential to resisting gaslighting. And I don't use that term lightly, because once you see the mechanics, you cannot unsee them. Take those headlines side by side: pregnant Kate tenderly cradling her bump versus Meghan unable to keep her hands off hers. Two women, identical actions, reported in the same newspaper, yet the narrative frameworks are so fundamentally different that you're left wondering if you're reading about the same species, let alone the same family. The public must understand that headlines are written by people with agendas, not reflections of truth. They are editorial choices, deliberate constructions designed to guide your thinking before you've even finished your morning coffee. These aren't accidents. their architecture. And accountability requires naming the systemic racism and classism embedded in British tabloid culture, because what we're witnessing isn't merely poor journalism or editorial inconsistency. It's the machinery of a society that simply cannot accommodate a woman who disrupts its carefully maintained hierarchies, who refuses to perform deference to structures that were never designed to include her. When you understand that, when you truly grasp it, you begin to see how the same institutions that shield powerful men from scrutiny will savage women who dare to exist outside prescribed boundaries. That's not opinion. That's observable fact.